Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. And as we delve into this week's topic, a reminder that some of the content may be of a sensitive nature. Now, here's your hosts, Tim and Des.
Welcome to this week's Momentum. It is really good to have you tuning in. Thanks so much for your time and spending some time with us. And encourage you, as always, to head to our website, but Des will tell you a bit more about that. In fact, let's go straight to the man himself, Mr. Kennedy. How are you this week?
That's good, man. I'm great. You know, it's amazing. I just am so blessed to be able to do this, and you know, everybody can be busy, but we take time out to do this and so into the lives of men. And I love the fact that we're blessed to do that, and the reach of it is just amazing. But guys, if you're doing life on your own, don't forget our care line, 1-800-000-MEN, 1-800-000-636. If you need a safe and confidential conversation and you haven't got somebody local in your world that you feel confident to talk to, please reach out to the Momentum Care Line, 1-800-000-636. And also don't forget our website, momentumaustralia.org. Lots of information on there, and particularly all our previous podcasts are all on there. And also, if you want to donate to this amazing ministry, you can do that directly from our website, momentumaustralia.org.
Yeah, very cool indeed. And look, I mean, the care line is there. Like Des and I have our own backstories of, let's say, doing life on our own to some degree. And that's part of the encouragement of Momentum, is to say, hey, if you feel like you don't have somebody in your world, you need to have a conversation. 1-800-000-636. Just encourage you to get connected as well. As men, we tend to do life in isolation, and that's really our heart at Momentum, is for you to not do life in isolation, to get connected, not just for the bad times, but to share the good as well and do life together with some mates. It's really, really important. So we talked about the website, we talked about the care line, and of course on the YouTube as well. You might be watching us, and you can connect with the show that way. You can click on the YouTube link on the website, momentumaustralia.org. and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss shows in the future. It is Des and I this week, just the two of us. And Des, we're going to talk about something that I think a lot of us actually struggle with to some degree. And you said at the beginning of the show that, a lot of us are busy. Yeah. We are busy. Well, if you go to most people in the street or your friends or your family and you say, how are you going? And they go, oh, yeah, I'm busy. But, I'm okay, or whatever it may be. I think a lot of us will say that we are busy. So this week, we want to kind of counteract that and look at the practice of stillness, actually being still. And I suppose there's two aspects of that. The first is from a biblical perspective in prayer and contemplation with the Lord, but there's also just allowing yourself to rest.
Yeah. Because
I don't think a lot of us actually do that well, and that is allow ourselves to rest.
And it's not only just rest from a physical perspective, so resting as in lying down, but allowing yourself to clear your mind and get rid of all the clutter that's in our mind. Because, we all men and women, we just don't necessarily have a discipline of doing that, of being able to, take a set time, per day or per week or whatever, and just, go into a quiet room and just contemplate and just think, or maybe don't even think, just be.
Well, look, I would argue, Des, that I think a lot of people, and I would say a lot of people listening, and I'm not saying genders particularly, but let's speak to the guys right now. I think a lot of people actually are probably closer to burnout than they realize.
I think that's probably true.
And I'm talking about both physical and mental burnout.
How would you identify that you're approaching burnout? I guess you get irritable, you get anxious about things, you don't feel as if you're analyzing things the way you need to, and you maybe make some rash decisions that, you pay a price for. Whereas if you took some time out and you thought about it and you meditated on it and pray about it, those things can be much better resolved as a result of that.
Let's just say when you've got too much on your plate, let's just say that way. It may not be that you're approaching burnout, but I think when you've got too much on your plate, your general feeling inside and how you operate is probably one of irritability. And there'll be little things that will trigger you snapping, taking you over the edge, because you're actually already feeling like you're pulled in too many different directions. And I know for me, I can feel like that. When my life gets super chaotic, I realize that I can be shorter, I'm snappier, I don't have the patience, I feel irritable. It's like, I just don't, I'm saying this to myself in my head. I don't need another thing to do or somebody else to think about. And I think if you're in that space, that would be a good indicator that you've probably got too much on your plate. Not necessarily that you're heading towards burnout, but if you stay in that space too long, then burnout probably is the next destination.
It's a really interesting discussion to have, because on Saturday night, just past, I went to a men's event in Camden Haven. And there was a gentleman that I was speaking to who was, believe it or not, 96 years old. Amazing mind, fully alert, fully mobile, drives his car, 96 years of age. And I did chat to him about how he does life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he did say was he always had time to be at peace. Yeah, and I think that's really sound advice. I think it's amazing. And, peace is what we're talking about. It is stillness. It is taking time out to do life better.
So he was at peace at the age of 96, but for a lot of us who aren't that age, this is the challenge, right?
Yes,
it's navigating the current season.
Yes.
Which for a lot of guys listening will be young families, young kids, probably a job, maybe two jobs with a side hustle. Seems to be a thing these days. Navigating all of the complexities of life. How do I find rest and stillness within all of that? And, Des, I don't know. We know your backstory to some degree. Did you feel like in that season of life you were able to balance that, find that balance at all?
No. No, to my shame. And I paid the price in terms of my relationship with my sons and my relationship with my first wife. And I paid the price for that. But I didn't take that time. I didn't take time. And even as a young Christian, in 2011, it was still very hard for me to take time out to read my Bible and to spend time meditating and praying, because I didn't have that discipline in my life. And I think that's what it takes. I think you have to set a time aside in your life, and maybe early in the morning, and maybe, last thing before you go to sleep. For me, it would be early in the morning, and take that time just to be still, just to be, to contemplate your world, think through all sorts of things that are going on.
There's two factors to that. There's like a daily practice then of praying.
Yes.
But then I think there's like almost a weekly practice of rest. So let's come back in a moment and unpack that. But I also, just for the sake of recapping our stories, for me, my story was 13 years as a Christian, and I did a lot of stuff. I was in prayer meetings and worship teams and worship practices, and there was a lot of doing, but there wasn't a lot of being. In fact, I loved to pray, but it was always on the move. I never sat still. I prayed in the car on the way to work. I prayed at prayer meetings. I didn't actually stop and have quiet time with the Lord. And after 13 years, when my first marriage fell apart, that was me learning then the journey from there, the art of actually building a relationship with the Lord in stillness, in silence, in quietness, in contemplation. And it was a really tough transition to start with. But now that is the first part of my day. Yeah. I make that. And it was a discipline at first. Now it's just a habit. Yes. Now it's something that I actually look forward to. And if I don't have the stillness at the beginning of the day, I feel like I am operating for the rest of the day out of that fractured kind of stressed nature instead of from a place of peace and rest.
I actually love that thought because it's called learned behavior. And it is exactly that. It is you have a muscle, and you use that muscle as a stimulant to take time out, right? Not that you're using muscles, but you know what I'm saying. It's like a muscle, and then it becomes so ingrained into your pattern that it's instinctive, and you miss it when it's not there. I think that's and I encourage any guy listening, do take that time out. But let me ask you a question, Tim. Obviously in life, if you're in a Christian relationship and your wife's a Christian, you would tend to spend time, praying with your wife. Is that a separate time to, what we're talking about now in terms of stillness? Are they two separate times?
I think so. I think do both.
Yeah.
Because I think as a man, as a husband, as the head of the home, I think you should be, in inverted commas, developing the intimacy in the relationship with the Lord yourself, right? That's a separate thing. That's a personal relationship that you have.
Yes.
And if you take that time to do that, it will, of course, have a knock-on effect then when you pray with your wife, for your kids, with your kids, etc.
Yeah.
Corporate prayer is wonderful, and that's absolutely, praying as a family is wonderful. But I think the idea, realistically, is that God knows each of us individually and wants a relationship with us individually.
That's true.
And I think there has to be both. There has to be, I'm building a relationship with the Lord on my own. And there's certain things, let's be honest, as men, that I will need to bring to the Lord without my wife's ear.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
We're not about breaking up marriages.
There's certain things that I want to talk to the Lord about. And it might even be my wife.
Yes, indeed.
And my kids that I need to be bringing to the Lord on my own, just in my quiet time, in my own space, and sitting in that space. But then absolutely corporate prayer with my wife. My wife and I generally pray most mornings, and hear me when they say that sounds super spiritual. It's not. It's a recognition to go, before we start the day, we commit the day to the Lord. And some days it's literally 30 seconds as she's running to the car or sat in the car going, I've got 30 seconds, I've got to get on the road. I'm like, cool, let me quickly pray for you. And then some nights, for example, it might be that we take an hour and a half to just sit and be and take communion and talk and read the word. And again, there's everything in between that. I think it's finding in your world whatever works for you, with your family, with your situation. But for men particularly, let's stay in that lane. Developing a daily habit of being still. And again, it might be 5 minutes on the morning. It might be half an hour in the morning. It might start at 5 minutes and get to half an hour, whatever that is for you. But if you build a daily practice of stillness, you will find that you will operate from a different place. You will find also that you will want to be in that space more, and your relationship with the Lord will I'm going to use an example, right? We've all been in those situations. I'm going to use Des as a poor example because he sat right in front of me. But if Des and I were having a conversation across a dinner table, for example, right, and we're talking about something, and then I pull my phone up and I go, keep talking, Des. I'm just going to do this. And Des is talking and I'm like, oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm not giving Des my full attention.
Yeah. This is a good analogy. I love that.
If you can imagine then that if we're driving in the car and we're praying to the Lord, I'm praying, but I'm not really giving him my full attention. Or if I'm walking and I'm praying to, there's something about when you stop and you position yourself and you are still. You pray, you stop, you listen. And I would argue that most of us do a lot more talking, and we should probably be doing a lot more listening. And I'm including myself in that, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good sound principle. And I think just to close that off a little bit, if we do take time on a physical level and an emotional level and a mental level, taking that time out to be quiet and to listen to God talking to us or us talking to ourselves or whatever that looks like is a good thing to do. It helps us balance. It helps us realize there's other things going on in our world. And it just helps to totally declutter, which is a good thing to do.
We're talking about the practice of stillness and rest on this week's Momentum. It is just Tim and Des with you this week. We are going to take a short break, and as we do that, we'll send you to the website, as always, momentumaustralia.org. And come back and join us for some more about the art of stillness, the practice of stillness on this week's Momentum. We'll chat soon.
This is Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
Welcome back. It is part 2 of this week's Momentum. It is Tim and Des with you as we delve into the practice of stillness on this week's show. And we just spent the first part of the show essentially kind of setting it up and going, a daily practice of stillness is a good thing. If you do not have that, that is certainly a good thing to do. And again, part of that is stillness with prayer, stillness in seeking the Lord and your relationship with the Lord, if you're a Christian, finding moments of rest throughout the day also are really beneficial for your mental health, anxiety levels, stress levels, physical health as well. And we want to talk a bit more about that as we unpack the second part of the show, Des, and talk about this idea of allowing ourselves to rest, because a lot of guys, I don't think, are good at doing that.
No, I think that's true. And I mean, if you look at the average guy's life, he gets up at 7 o'clock in the morning, helps his kids to get breakfast, helps his wife to do whatever she's doing, get the kids to school, goes to work, works through to 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, probably doesn't take any breaks during that time, and, as it comes home exhausted, plays with the kids, they go to bed, has a 15-minute chat with his wife, and then falls asleep in front of the TV. And then at the weekend, there's all the sports that guys go to. There's, activities that they get involved with, barbecues, whatever, shopping, whatever, the world is. We all can be extremely busy. And that's why we're saying, having a discipline that says, there is 30 minutes in my life every day that I'm going to be still. Well, what happens when you're still? Tim, answer that question. What actually happens? Because I guess you could break that down into saying, for the first, let's say 30 minutes, of the first 10 minutes, it is all the stuff programming through your mind. It's, it's all stuff going on. I have to do this. I have to do that. I forgot to do that. And then you enter a phase of true stillness where those things have passed. You're not talking about those anymore. And you can then meditate. And so we need that time.
Yeah. I heard somebody famously say, and I forget actually who it was, but when they went into their prayer closet, they would have 2 notepads on the desk. And one was for the rogue thoughts that come up, like, oh, I need to get milk, or I need to call that person, right?
Yes.
So they'd have a pad for that to go, right, once I've jotted that down, I can forget about that. And the other was for what they felt the Lord was saying to them. And I thought that's really good, because the truth is, when you first stop, your brain will still be going. And it takes discipline for us to slow this thing down. And stop those random thoughts from just interjecting. And it'll be like, oh, that's right, I was meaning to do that, so let me just put that down. Or I do need to call that person, or I need to message that person, or I need to whatever. That's the rogue stuff that will come in. But then keep this one for what you feel like the Lord is saying, scriptures, whatever it may be, other stuff that you feel like you get in this stillness. But look, when I first stopped, Des, when I first learned the art of stopping, this was back in 2014. And honestly, 30 seconds for me felt like a lifetime at first. Because I was used to doing and being and talking, even praying to the Lord. Like but being still and actually not saying anything and just going, Lord, I'm here. I'm posturing myself to hear from you, and I'm not going to say anything. Is there something you want to say to me? And I can tell you that first 30 seconds will feel like a lifetime.
Yes, that's right.
Until you get into the practice of doing it.
I mean, I love the idea of the 2 notepads, by the way.
It's a really smart thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I was a programmer, right in the beginning of my career, I used to be writing programs for a bank, and I would always have a pad beside my bed, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and have this idea and write it down. But the idea of having those 2 pads, guys, get on board with that. That's really worth thinking about. In that first 5-10 minutes, write down all the things that you have to do and all the cluttery stuff. But then have another pad. That's your spiritual pad. That's where, you have ideas from God, or your, whatever that looks like, as part of that stillness. I think if guys learn that is a huge discipline and a great, great move.
I just want to say, like, for people listening or watching, and whether you're male or female, it doesn't really matter. The benefits of doing this, right? And again, this is what I've learned in my own life. I had 13 years as a Christian where I was doing. I've had now 12 years after that of learning the art of stillness and starting my day in a different way. And so I just want to encourage you, because for a lot of us, I just don't have time. I can't do it. That sounds great. That sounds ideal, but it's just, honestly, if you can allow whatever it's 5, 10, 15, 20, half an hour, whatever it is for you in your life to start your day this way. And we're talking particularly if you're a faith. Right, let's get into that space and say, if you're a Christian, making time for the Lord is paramount. And I want to just put it as a bigger picture. And for those of us who are married, right? Somebody once said, actually, it was Erwin McManus who actually once said, and if you don't know Erwin, check him out. He's got a whole brain that works on a whole other level. But he said, I don't have a knowledge of my wife. I have a knowing of my wife.
All right.
If I just had a knowledge of, it would be, I've got a sheet of paper with all of my wife's details. She's 5 foot whatever. She's X number of kilos. She likes this. She dislikes this. She goes to this church. She lives in this. That's a knowledge of. But I have a knowing of my wife when I sit with her, when I am intimate with her. I'm not just talking sexually. I'm talking about intimately, when I know her heart, when I get to know who she is and her heart. And I think a lot of us we've read the Bible and we've got a knowledge of God. But to get a knowing, you've got to get intimate with the Lord. And intimate means I am putting away other distractions and I'm getting to know him. And I've had many, many conversations, one even in the last 2 weeks, with a young man who was in a similar story to me. He'd been in worship teams for many, many years. And he was at the point now in his early 30s with a new family going, I'm not sure if I even believe anymore. I'm like, okay, so you've been doing instead of being, and it's actually sabotaging your faith because you've been doing so much that you've actually forgotten to connect with the person who you've been doing for.
That's good. That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead of actually building intimacy with him first and foremost, and then out of that comes the doing. But the doing will look different when you come from a different place of being.
That's true. That's very true.
Right? And even for me, I used to sing in worship teams all the time. And you know what? After I built a relationship with the Lord, I say to people, I went from singing, just singing on a platform, knowing my parts, knowing my bits and doing that well. I went from that to knowing what it is to actually worship. Because the singing before was using my gift. Worshiping was knowing who I was using my gift for.
A response to God. Yeah.
And the two are very different. So I just want to encourage you, if this all sounds, it sounds great, but I just don't know, no. If you're struggling in your walk with the Lord, you've practiced the art of stillness with him. Allow him to speak into your heart and your spirit, guys. And this not only starts cementing your identity, it's that you get clarity around your calling. You start getting different wisdom and revelation according to Ephesians. That all comes from when you start knowing, not just a knowledge of.
And requires a discipline as well. I mean, it's easy, it's not easy to say, but it's hard to do. But also, like most of us in today's world, you know, as soon as we're waking up, we're picking up our phone and we're, you know, checking messages or emails, whatever it happens to be. And you have lost the moment in many cases, you know, because your mind is now busy with other stuff. And so a good idea may be either not have your phone beside your bed, or just to get into a discipline of not going near your phone until you've gone through your time and you have that gone through that peace and that stillness. Because your whole world will be very different when you do that.
Perhaps wrapping up in Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. It's a famous scripture. Be still and know that I am God. Not just a knowledge of, not just I know it and I speak it, but I know it in my heart. I've experienced it and I live out of that experience. Because again, for my own self, and I'm sure other people who are listening or watching right now, when you've gone from the knowledge of to a knowing of the Lord, you operate from a different space.
I love
There's
that.
a different intimacy involved in that. And that's what we're trying to get you to today, is to go, you know what, you can always deepen your relationship. The onus is on you. There's always an invitation for you to come deeper into his presence.
That's so true.
And that's what we're encouraging you into today.
That's great. And just before we finish, this is our last show of 2024. And so on behalf of Tim, and Tim will speak for himself in a minute, I just want to wish all our listeners a wonderful and family and Christ-focused Christmas and New Year. We'll certainly be back after that. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Des. I'd forgotten it is the last show for the year. So, look, thank you to you.
Oh, no, you too, man.
For doing this. Thank you to our guests throughout the year again, who faithfully and freely, may I say, give of their time. And also the stations that play us around Australia. the people that listen on the podcast, and of course you, the listeners right now, and the viewers perhaps on YouTube. Because the truth is, we wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you.
Yes.
And we are so grateful that you tune in, you watch, you listen, whatever it is. And if you donate as well, we thank you for supporting us, because again, we don't get a lot of support ongoing. If you support us, thank you. It's been another big year, and we've had a lot of emails of people that have needed help and have got help and have appreciated the show, and that's awesome too. If you have any feedback, please get in touch with us over Christmas and we'll get back to you. And if we can help you in any way, shape or form next year, then again, let us know, because that's why Momentum exists, to help men all around Australia and now seemingly around the globe through the podcast, to just do life better, to be better men, to step up into your full identity in Christ and live a life that is, Ephesians 4, worthy of the calling that you've received. That's our heart at Momentum. So have a wonderful Christmas. May it be safe, may it be relaxing, reflective, and all of those things. And we will catch you at some stage in 2025.
How exciting is that? And Tim, by the way, thank you so much. You've been a great blessing to me personally, and I want to acknowledge that. And I so enjoy doing this with you. So thank you.
Thanks, Des.
You've been listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. For more information or to hear this week's show again, go to MomentumAustralia.org. You can also access a whole range of resources to help you on your journey and to get in touch with the team at MomentumAustralia.org. Until next time, keep moving forward with Momentum.